There we go. We did have another little point release for a few things that we needed to clean up for a few people. I'm not really going to go over it. It was a lot of ILS specific stuff. I guess I'll flash up the, whoops, I am not signed in. I am not. There we go. So just a few things for like Carl-X and Evolve and Sierra and Symphony, all of those little ILS things we do for a little cleanup as people tweak things. And as we learn more and more about all of the different ILSs. So again, we won't really go after that today. Let's look at 2312. Jordan's going to talk through the Aspen LIDA updates later. And I will stick to the discovery stuff. So first we have some account updates. So we have a new preference to show or hide checkouts and holds in search results. And if you're not sure what I mean, what that means is right here. So I'm searching for something that I currently have checked out. We get the button that says checked out to you. We've noticed with some patrons that have a lot of things checked out, like 70, 80, 100, and then especially if they're linking to all of their kids who also all have 100 things checked out, it gets a little slow to load all of those checkouts. And also for patron privacy, somebody may not want to see all of those things that are checked out if they're doing a lot of work at public stations, that kind of thing, so they may want to hide those. So we now have that button that turns that off. Just update your preferences. Let me log in, update our preferences. And now when we search, we'll no longer see those and we'll just get the placehold button. Of course, we will, based off your ILS and your rules, assuming you have a hold already or have it checked out, you won't be able to place another hold. You just get that error later. So it's more informational information. So that's cool, especially for people with the big checkouts and stuff. Next, looking at our release notes, I'm going to look at the Access 360 and Boundless. So Access 360 changed their name a month or so ago to officially be Boundless. So now if you do a search, I've done a blank search here, applied the e-content collection of Boundless. And you will see everywhere that we were saying Access 360, we now say Boundless, just for consistency with that. If you had translated that already, that's great. It'll still just update to say Boundless for you. If for some reason you translated it to something that wasn't Boundless, you would need to go through and update that again. But other than that, all the functionality stays the same. Everything you could do before, placing holds, checking holds out, or checking titles out, you will still get to do that, and it all behaves exactly the same. Next, we talked about this at the gathering last time, and it was implemented. So we had talked about moving the languages and display from the header into the account menu. So here we've got display options there, all the languages. You can now choose if you want to have this button there as well, or if you want to get rid of it. So I'm just going to search for display, and I'm going to turn that off. And as you see, that gets rid of that button. Since I'm still an administrator with translation mode, I still see that, but we don't see any of the display options or languages. And that's based off of feedback from y'all last time that we wanted to make that a toggle and not just default it. It will default to showing so that functionality doesn't change through the upgrade. Next, we had some tweaks for Evergreen for how the export is done, just to kind of slow down how much traffic we're sending to the Evergreen server. Made a few different settings configurable to reduce load if that's a needed thing. So how many times we're retrying, if we get a failed lookup, how long we pause between bib lookups, and also the number of extraction threads. This is something everybody can pretty much ignore, but just wanted to show it. as we were talking about loading the holds, so moving back here to release notes, so one of the things we did with Koha, as we were testing those people with 70 or 80 or 100 things checked out, we noticed it was a little slow. And some of that's as we added additional functionality, though that additional functionality requires additional database lookups, additional API calls. We worked really hard to improve that as much as we can. So previously loading 70 checkouts was taking around a minute. And we got that down to, I think, about 20 seconds. So it still takes a little while. We're still loading data from a server and having to bring in a bunch of information, but it's much, 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 much faster. So cut that down substantially without losing any functionality. So we didn't want to do things that would say like, we don't know if you can renew it or not, because those are things everybody wanted. The other thing we did was messaging preferences. There were issues with the digest. So we did some kind of quality of life and usability improvements. So right now the digest is only selectable if you get one or more transport methods. And we were having issues with all digest options saving. Previously it was only kind of saving the last one in that list. So that's fixed for you. Then similarly to Boundless, we updated Overdrive to Libby. This is something we've talked about a bunch. So now you will be able to, so everywhere that it was saying Overdrive, it's now saying Libby, so we can filter down on that. So here we've got our checkout Libby and place hold Libby, previews. These also then have the ability to be customized. So in your Libby scope, we now have the ability to define the reader name. So if for some reason you're calling it something different, you can change that reader name in order to make that whatever you want. And that way then if you have different libraries in the consortia calling it different things, they can each call them something different. Next, we did a lot of work with Palace Project. This is something that is not ready for production use yet. Jordan will talk more about it later, but basically we're going to have a phase 1 and a phase 2. The phase 1 is getting everything pulled in from Palace Project and indexed so that you can see it within the results, and so that we can modify it. There's probably going to be tweaking to this. So again, not ready for production use, but we can show you lots of good stuff. So we've got our Palace Project e-content collection in our sample set. We've got almost 38,000 things. We've got the ability to preview. So if the title has capability to preview, we will do that. You can view it in full screen. We're working still on getting the audiobook ones in. And we have, obviously, we can see them within search results. We can see full record views. The next step and part of that phase 2 is going to be being able to do all the circulation actions to be able to check things out and place holds and that kind of thing. So this is something I know we've been talking about for a while. It's lots of people's highest priority. So we really wanted to work on that Palace Project things. And then, sorry, I missed a question in the chat. So if you had used translation mode to update Overdrive to Libby, or if you had changed Overdrive to something else, you will need to change that again. If you had updated it from Overdrive to Libby, don't worry about it. Everything is called Libby where it needs to be. So only if you had changed it from Overdrive to something like local for your state or local for your consortium would you need to take a look at that. Next, we're looking at quick polls. So in quick polls, we now have the ability. So I'm going to look here in one of our choosing the new library mascot one. So one of the requests we've had is, hey, it would be great to show these results to patrons. So we now have the ability to say, what results are we showing to patrons? So it's going to default to not showing any results. Otherwise, we can show just the graph, show a table of results, or both the graph and the table. So if we say show graph, then here in the results, we would still get those results. And if I log out and then go back to that page, I'm still going to see those results. If that was turned off, then I would be able to, or I would get an error page here that would say that I don't have access to it. We're not creating any result or any links by default, so you would need to embed those in Web Builder or on your website. But that is a permanent link, so you'd be able to do that. There was some other cleanup related to quick polls around names and that kind of thing. I'm not going to go into detail on that. Next big thing, and the last big thing that I'm kind of going to demo, is we've made a bunch of improvements to searching. And this is something that we're experimenting on test servers a little bit this time. We want to make sure that it's back, that it is better. The relevancy is something that's super tricky to get right. So we can test the test cases that we know of, but we do need your help to test them. Miranda's going to talk a little bit more about that in a second. So if for some reason we go through testing, we figure out that these aren't improvements, then we will not deploy them, and we'd let everybody know. But let's talk about some of the things that we've done. So first thing that we've done, so one of the things that we noticed, especially with search results like Bloom, especially when you're looking at title searching. So Bloom is one of those words where it could mean a whole bunch of things. So it could mean Bloom the title. It could mean Bloom the author. There's several authors with the last name of Bloom, and there's several series with Blooms. So one of the things we noticed was several of the series were showing too much, and we worked to reduce that. So this is the original one. So scrolling down here, we were getting things like The Taming of the Shrew, which nobody's like, why is that Bloom? So if we look at that, it's, well, there's Bloom's Shakespeare Through the Ages. And that series was kind of throwing things off. So in the new one, if we do a search by title and search for Bloom, these results are going to look a lot better. We're de-emphasizing that series search. So we're going to get a lot more with just the title of Bloom. We see Bloom, 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 Bloom of the Flower Dragon, Bloomsbury Girls. So a lot more where just the title is that. We're not going to actually see any of those classics for many, many pages. I didn't actually scroll through to see exactly where it shows up, but they are definitely not on the first couple of pages. So hopefully this is more what patrons are going to expect and what they're seeing. So the other thing that kind of contributes in similar ways is we do some boosting of relevancy based off how many things you own, how many times that checks out, what formats you're buying, and those things that just really help us when things are kind of ambiguous, like with a title like Bloom. Like we would want to increase things, all things being equal, we'd rather you get something that is more popular than less popular. Other things being equal or close enough to equal. So we realized that that was a little bit doing too much boosting. So we've implemented some caps on that so that things aren't boosted quite so much. And we think that's really going to help the relevancy, especially for some of those things like the classics where um, they might be showing too much in too many different places. Also did some work for when if you're in a start of title search. So I'm just going to do a search for Taylor Jenkins Reid, which obviously there's not a start of title with her. So what was happening, this is looking at the old result, we were still sorting by title because we were doing a start of title search. We didn't find anything, so we converted to the keyword index. That gets really confusing for patrons because we've got 100 results here that aren't the most relevant. So we do get there at the third. That depends on what search we do. Now, when we do that, if we search for Taylor Jenkins Reid, it is still going to convert us to a keyword result, but it's going to switch back to best match. So that way patrons are getting the things that they're expecting. They probably didn't realize they were still in start of title mode. So it was confusing and now it's fixed. Last thing that we really did for this searching was fix searching with and without leading articles for start of title search. So if we search for the giver start of title in the old, we got 23 results. That's great. We found the giver. But if we just searched for giver and ignored that, we would get lots of things starting with giver because there's lots of titles that do that, but we weren't getting the giver. And that was also something people found confusing. So now if we do a start of title search and search for giver, we'll retype that here in a sec here. So let's search for giver. So now we are going to see the giver in addition to just giver. And we will still see giver. These are just sorting by title. So giver A, giver B, giver notes. And then that also still works. If you do search for the giver, you will still get things that are the giver. So kind of the best of both worlds, we get both there. That wasn't an instant, so there are other things that are in the release notes. Please take a look. I'm going to pass it over to Jordan, though, to take a look at some of the LEDA changes.
Okay, let me get my screen share just a minute. Just like Mark said, please do check out the release notes because we do fix additional things than what we show. There's a couple bug fixes in there for LEDA. What I want to draw your attention to right now is this new button called Disable Account Linking. This is new in LEDA. It was available in Aspen, and we try to keep these two different things, the app and the website or the discovery, in sync. So now you can completely disable account linking from LEDA. We also made sure with account linking that all of the notices are synced and that you get the notices in Discovery or in LEDA, depending on which one you're using. And by notices, I mean a notice when someone has linked to your account or when someone has unlinked an account that was previously linked. All of that is now synced and available in both Discovery and LEDA. The other big thing that we did, if you remember, we talked about making things faster in LEDA. That was one of the big things we wanted to do. We moved loading of languages to the time when a patron clicks and needs another language, essentially. After you logged in, depending on the site that you logged into, it would load all of the languages for that site. So if you were a library that had 5 different languages enabled, LEDA took a little bit of a long time to load because it was loading all 5 of those languages. Now what it does, if you're a user that needs a language other than English or whatever your default language is, it does not load until you go into change to that language. And then you do have a little bit of a wait time, but our feeling is that's understandable. People understand that if they're switching the app, things are happening in the background. So that's one of the performance enhancements that we did for LEDA. And I think that's all we have for LEDA today. So I'm going to hand it back over to Miranda.